Raise your hand if you've ever cooked for Gordon Ramsay. No, seriously, go on. I'll wait. Okay, so I obviously can't see you, but I'm guessing not many of you have actually cooked for Gordon Ramsay before. On today's show, I have Chef Derrick Fox. You're going to hear how this punk rock drummer went from being on the Warped Tour to the runner-up of MasterChef Season 6 and then returned for All Stars Season 12. You're going to hear the story of how he started his own private chef business and then launched a cookie business called Epic Mega Cookies. Hi, this is Chris Spear, and I'm the host of Chefs Without Restaurants, the show where I speak with culinary entrepreneurs and people in the food and beverage industry working outside of a traditional restaurant setting. So yes, today I have Chef Derrick Fox, and I was really interested by his story. He didn't come up through the traditional restaurant ranks like many of us did. He didn't go to culinary school, though he did have some restaurant experience. But Derrick used to be a drummer in a punk rock band. He's toured all over the country and played the Warped Tour, which I think is really cool because I love that kind of music. And like many people who work in the restaurant industry, he started in the front of the house, but then eventually decided that he wanted to get some back of the house experience and started cooking. The more he did it, the more he loved it, and he actually found himself cooking when he was out on tour with his band. After a number of years playing shows on the road, he decided he wanted to try something different, so he submitted an application to the show MasterChef, and guess what? He was picked. So next thing you know, he was cooking dishes for them, and they liked what they saw, so he was on the show. And Derrick managed to impress Gordon Ramsay and was a runner-up in Season 6. Then he was asked if he wanted to come back and do a season of All Stars, and he said yes, and in between the time between when he did Season 6 and when he ended up doing All Stars, he decided he wanted to really build and grow his brand and his business so that he would have something to promote when Season 12 came out. And I don't want to give too much away, but I will say that Derrick eventually started his own private chef business. He's launched a cookie line, and he started a podcast called A Bunch of Losers, where he talks to other people who've been on reality TV shows who didn't win, which I think is a pretty cool concept. And before we get to the show, I want to let you know about something I'm really excited about. I'm going to be doing collaborative pop-up dinners. That was something I always planned with Chefs Without Restaurants. I did a couple of them back in 2019 and early 2020 before COVID started. And, obviously that put a stop to kind of what I wanted to do there. And while we're still dealing with COVID, things have obviously loosened up a bit, and I'm comfortable starting to do these dinners again. The first one is going to be with Chef Matt Collins on Saturday, March 12th in New Jersey. We're still working out the final details, but I'd love to see some of you there. It's going to be a fun, collaborative 6-course dinner, plus probably a few extras. It'll be a blend of our cuisines and styles. And this is something I want to continue, so if you're interested, hit me up. I'd love to travel to wherever you are and do a pop-up together. Maybe we can also do a Chefs Without Restaurants meetup. If that's something you're into, let me know. Send me an email at chefswithoutrestaurants@gmail.com. Now, let's get down to business. Here's the show. Thanks so much for listening, and have a great week. Hey, Derrick, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for coming on.
A great concept, Chefs Without Restaurants. There's an army of us, man. I mean, and, I think a lot of like restaurant chefs, they project that we're like a lower class chef sometimes. And at least I've experienced that. And I think it's that ego that they hold on to, because like being a chef without a restaurant is sometimes a lot harder.
You rarely have a support system, right? Like most of us are solo operators, which means you're doing the admin stuff, the menu planning stuff. You might be doing the accounting stuff, your social media stuff, shopping, cooking, all of
the grocery store, the prepping,
100%. But I think people are getting it more, and I still see it kind of as like an age thing, like the kind of younger, brasher chefs, like hashtag chef life, like the chef bro culture, where those guys are like restaurant, ride or die. And then they hit like maybe like 30 or so and like, maybe I don't want to be doing this for the rest of my life.
Yeah. And what's funny is like sometimes I'll have parties for my client where I get to hire a team. And when I have that team in there, like this weekend, I did a party. We had like 50 people at the house in Malibu. I mean, my client goes all out. We did this giant seafood tower. I mean, it was literally like 100 pounds of seafood and thousands of dollars of caviar. I mean, it was insane. We flew in dueling pianos from Vegas. I mean, like, it was insane. And I got to call my guys like that I use for parties, and I've been getting to use them a couple times in a row the last couple weeks. And, we were in there and we were grooving and we were pumping everything out, and it made me like miss being in a restaurant. It gave me that like nostalgia, like, man, they're all ride or die right now. Like, this is such a good feeling when you're accomplishing something as a team. And yeah, so restaurants, they get that all the time. And you realize like how solo you really are when you're a private chef, when you get those moments to work with other people. So I don't know, it was interesting, but I loved it.
Yeah, I love working with people. That's one of the reasons I wanted to start Chefs Without Restaurants is, even if I couldn't find people to work with me on the day-to-day, maybe we could do events and stuff together. But now as I do bigger events, I'm hiring people to help with me. And this guy, Mike, he used to be like my chef de cuisine, like before I started my business. And he helps me out a lot. And it's that thing, like Mike and I cooked together for 5 years, right? Like he knows when I move for something, like how he needs to move, or like can almost see in my eyes when I like need something and knows that like, oh, he needs the olive oil, right? And like that feeling is really good because I don't work with people that often. And to have someone working with me who like totally just knows what I need, when I need it, and how I want something done is really awesome. And that's what I miss about working, in a place with other people. So before we start talking about cooking, I want to talk about your background because I think it's a little interesting. You were a drummer in a previous life, right?
Yeah. You can see him sitting behind me. For those that, I know this is just the audio podcast, but the drums are stacked behind me. Yeah, I was playing drums in high school to like take out frustration. I had that teenage angst. I listened to, a bunch of emo music, and it was like, God, it was such a different time. Like people, like these kids these days.
What were you listening to back then? Like, what were you jamming?
A lot of like Taking Back Sunday, Thursday, early Fall Out Boy, of course, like Blink-182, Sum 41, Newfound Glory, all those just like emo pop punk bands, Dashboard Confessional. But then I would also listen to like Goo Goo Dolls, and then Counting Crows. I was kind of all over the place. Because I'd also put like, if I had a girl coming over, I'd put on John Mayer.
You're definitely in that like Warped Tour mentality.
And I got to play Warped Tour.
Wow. Like what year? Like who was on the bill that year?
It was amazing. It was like Gym Class Heroes. Paramore was playing the Hurley stage. Like they weren't even big yet. Story of the Year. I mean, it was wild. It was 2005. We played it. So we would tour with using MySpace. We would promote all of our shows with MySpace. We'd book all of our shows through MySpace. We were ranked in the top 10 unsigned bands on MySpace. Like they used to rank the music. And so we were getting enough plays and enough traction around the country. We were top 10 unsigned bands. So we could message a venue on MySpace and be like, hey, look, this is us. Can we come play your club? And they'd build shows around us. And summer of 2005, we had booked this whole tour. We were on the road, and Warped Tour got word of how good we were doing, and they called us, and we ended up canceling the rest of our tour and jumping on Warped Tour, which was awesome and also so hard at the same time. Like Warped Tour was a whole different beast. But then we made like 80 grand that summer as 4 kids in a van traveling around the country. And like in 2006, like 80 grand was a lot of money for 4 kids that were just living off of, gas station food. And we took that money and we moved out to LA, and I've been here ever since. And we were crushing in LA too. The band was called Later Days. Our music's still like on Spotify. We have music in some TV shows, like some of the early Kardashian episodes and Real World and stuff like that. So I get a little like 10-cent residual check every day.
Living the life.
It adds up. Anyway, so we were doing well. We were Kiss FM breakout star. We got to play Wango Tango at Staples Center. We played Jingle Ball, and then the band it just kind of fell apart, but kind of at the right time because the music scene was changing and pop was just becoming so big, and punk rock, pop rock was just falling behind. Now there's a big resurgence, but we're all too busy to jump back on it. But I kept playing drums, and then I started playing for some pop singers and some pop groups, and I kept going. I was in this one pop group, 3 girls, but the girls were just fighting. We were fighting the whole time. And I was like, you know what? Like being a drummer, I'm always supporting the singer. I'm always supporting a front man. And I have front man energy. When I play drums, I play like, I have Travis Barker vibes, and I was just like, I need to go do something for me. And I emailed MasterChef, and literally 20 minutes after my email went through, I brewed a cup of coffee and the phone rang, and then everything's history after that.
That's quite a transition there. Lots to unpack. So cooking and food, like, did you have any experience at all? Had you ever worked in a restaurant, even fast food? I mean, it sounds like you didn't do culinary school or any of that, didn't come up through the ranks like so many of the cooks and chefs out there. How did you think, or why did you think you had the chops to just go on MasterChef?
I'm the kind of person, like, when I say I'm good at this, like, I truly know that I'm good at it. I've taken the time to understand it. But until I get to that point, I'm like a ninja absorbing what's around me. So my first job to pay for my drum set, I was a grill cook at McDonald's. Like literally flipping burgers, but you don't flip burgers. You just throw the patties on a flat top and then you press them with another flat top. And then in 30 seconds, they're done. Anyway, so I worked at McDonald's. Being a drummer in LA, you're not making a lot of money. So I had to work at restaurants, but I would serve at restaurants, to get that quick cash. And long story short, one day I had this client or this guest sitting at the table. I was working at CPK at the time. He was like, you got to work at a fine dining restaurant. He's like, if you want to make money and also be a musician, he's like, you need bigger money and you need to work less. He's like, you need a fine dining restaurant. I was like, okay. And so I went on the search. And then when I was waiting tables at this fine dining restaurant, I started falling in love with like the creativity of the food. And so I would get my tables taken care of and done, and I would go back to the kitchen and I would stand behind the path and I would just watch. And the chef started noticing. He's like, what are you doing? I was like, I was just watching. And he was like, okay. And like, he just kind of was like too busy to like get on me about it. And then I got comfortable to where I could like ask him questions, because he saw that I was also, the more I was learning from him, my sales were going up on the sales floor, on the restaurant floor. So he's like, okay, I'm going to give this kid all the knowledge. So he kept every day, like I'd learn something new from him, and I'd go home and I'd try it. And then I started buying fish from him. Like I wasn't going to the grocery store. I was like, chef, is there any Chilean sea bass left over? Can I buy some, or cod or whatever? Yeah, and he would sell it to me at cost. I would take it home and I would try to recreate his dishes. And then I started just understanding like how dishes were built by breaking his down. And so then I started playing with my own stuff, and then I would cook for my friends. I would cook for the bands I was playing for. And then, yeah, I had enough friends like saying, you need to do something with food. You need to do something with food. And I was like, I'm here to play drums. Like I wasn't ready to like give that up yet. And I find this on my podcast when I'm talking to a lot of people about, where they were right before they went on a reality show. I was in a rough spot. Like I wasn't making enough money to really get by. Like every month I was overdrafting and I was just like stressed. And I was like, I need to do something that like is big. Like I need to like go try and win some money. So I actually applied to Chopped first. I was like, maybe I can win 10 grand on Chopped real quick. Because I had watched that show enough, I was like, I can go do that. Now I'm terrified. I don't even know if I would go do Chopped. But I was like, I'll apply to Chopped. I didn't hear back from Chopped. And I was like, what am I doing? I've watched every Gordon Ramsay show. Let me apply to MasterChef. Sure enough, then it hit. And I went in like super naive. And I think that's why I did so well, because I wasn't trying to follow rules. I wasn't like building sauces. I wasn't doing it the traditional way. I was just like focusing on making something taste good and look awesome. And
what's the very first thing you made when you were on MasterChef?
So to audition off camera, I did a seared scallop dish with a purple cauliflower puree, roasted Brussels sprouts, and a white balsamic gastrique, which is like super cliche now, but like in 2014, like a purple cauliflower puree was like all the rage. And like I look back at the photo, it was so bad. Like I didn't strain my puree. I didn't pass it through a sieve. I think I just boiled the cauliflower, which made it like very light purple. all kinds of air, but like, that's the thing. Like, I didn't know. And I was just like, I'm going to turn this into a puree and make it taste good. And I think enough butter and salt, it'll taste good. So they liked it. They liked my personality. And then when the first time I cooked for Gordon Ramsay, I did lamb lollipops with a coconut curry sauce and quinoa. And I plated it super cool. I had it like stacked, like I had them like all twisted like a pyramid, and the quinoa was all inside, and the sauce was drizzled or dotted or whatever. And but the juxtaposition, I think, is what they really liked, because like I was in these torn jeans, I had Chucks on, and I had a $9 shirt that I had cut $6 off of. Like I looked like I was ready to go play drums for like Rancid or something. But then I plated this really, really pretty dish, and I nailed it. Like, what's crazy too is they tell you a little behind the scenes, MasterChef, before you come cook for Gordon Ramsay, they need to know all the ingredients because they got to supply them for you. So they need to know your ingredients. They need to know the recipe so they know where to film. Like if there's a flambe in your recipe, they need to know where that is so they make sure they capture it. They need to know all the pans because you're walking in, and this is the first time you're cooking for them. So you have to submit a dish. And I had never cooked lamb because I could never afford it. Like, I wasn't buying it. So I was just like, I understand the concept of how to cook this, and go big or go home. So
that's pretty ballsy, though, to not have even like bought a rack of lamb to try it just that one time.
Well, I didn't have the money. I was negative in my bank account. I really wanted to. And what I was actually doing to lead up to practice before is I was calling friends and saying, hey, bring some food over. I want to do a dinner party. You guys bring it over. I'll cook it. But I couldn't tell them why, because that has to be a secret. So, people were bringing stuff over. So I was getting to cook steaks, but no one wanted to bring lamb. Everyone was like, I don't like lamb. I'm like, fuck. Like, so yeah, I just treated it. I don't know. I just used my instinct. I cooked it, and honestly, fucking nailed it.
Well, how intimidating was it cooking for Gordon Ramsay?
The first time, it was insane. I was shaking so much that like I had to practice doing the sauce on like a blank plate because the sauce was going on after the lamb, and I didn't want to fuck it all up. I was shaking so bad that like it would have looked like a Jackson Pollock painting if I would have just gone right at it. It was so intimidating. And also, I think we got like 30 minutes for our first audition to cook for him, and that 30 minutes feels like 30 seconds, man. I mean, it goes by so fast. It was going so fast, like you forget little things. Like, I threw a cast iron pan in the oven to get hot so that while I was making the quinoa and the sauce, I was using all my burners. I couldn't get that pan hot on the stove to sear the lamb, so I threw it in the oven. And I was just moving so fast, I literally reached in bare hand to grab the cast iron because I was just thinking about the clock. And I fucking burned my palm so bad that like we had to bandage it. And luckily, like the second episode didn't shoot till the week after I got to heal, but it was bad.
Even if you got it out of the oven using an oven mitt, I guarantee you would have had it on the stove and you would have grabbed that with your bare hand, right? Because that I do that all the time. It's like you never
not do that.
No, you always put it in the oven to finish something and then put it up on the stove. And even 10 minutes later, you're like, oh, I got to move this to the back because I need this front burner. And you just grab it. And I always say, for people who don't know, it's like that scene in Raiders of the Lost Ark where the guy grabs the thing out of the fireplace. You know what I'm talking about? And it like burns into his hand. You get that like nice little circle in your hand where no good.
The way I prevent doing that is I leave a towel on it now. If it's hot, I leave a towel on the handle. But yeah, they'll do it. But then this last time, doing MasterChef All-Stars, I was actually more excited. I wasn't intimidated by them at all. The most stressful thing this time around was just like the unknowns of the challenges. And for anyone that has watched the All-Star season, like, it became more about drama than about food, and I got really annoyed with that. And so, it didn't go my way, but at the same time, I think that it went the way that it was going to go.
Well, I'd love to hear about what happened between seasons 6 and 12, because, so you come off of that season, then what? Like how were you able to kind of turn that into kind of more of a cooking career? What happened as soon as you were done with the show?
It was a really hard struggle at the beginning because we film it and then we have to wait 3-4 months before we can announce. And it's like 5 months until the first episode airs. So there was this long period where I knew that I was runner up, but didn't win. So I had this feeling in the back of my head this thought in the back of my head that they were going to edit me at some point to look like a villain because I didn't win. I got lucky they never did that because I never really gave them anything to villainize myself, but the power of Hollywood, you know what I mean? Like I was just still nervous. I was also struggling still. Like I finished, I didn't win. I still came out of there with no money and I was trying to figure out, how to keep going. And like I was trying to get server jobs and they were like, what's this big 6-month gap? And I'm like, I can't tell you. So that was hard. A lot of family and friends were like, where have you been? And I was lying to them saying I was on tour. They're like, well, how come you aren't posting? I was like, it was with an artist I wasn't allowed to share. And like, I hated it. Also, I was like, I'm not a chef. Like, I just did really well on MasterChef, but like, I don't know anything about actually going and running a kitchen. I love food. I do love working in restaurants, but I've never been on that side. So I thought to myself, I was like, okay, how can I get like a crash course to be ready for whatever airs? Because I knew there was a moment when we were filming. I came back to the hotel and like I wrote in my journal, I was like, I changed my life today. And it was one of those things like I just didn't know how it was going to pan out. And so before the show started airing, I went to a burger lounge and I was like, can I start like at your lowest position in the back and work my way up? And they were like, what? Why is this white dude coming here trying to do prep at Burger Lounge? Because like Southern California, there's not like a white dude doing prep. It's just like, they would never give me that job. I'm too slow. I don't speak enough kitchen Spanish. Like there's no reason, but I begged them for this job. They gave it to me. And I started just doing prep at Burger Lounge and worked my way up. And then one day, one guy didn't show up for salad. So I got the salad station. And then one day the guy worked the grill, didn't show up. So I got grill. That kicked my ass. But I learned how to run a grill that is cooking, meats to temp at a really fast pace. Burger Lounge is like fast casual. So you're working at the fast pace of like a fast food restaurant, but you're cooking it as like a casual dining restaurant. So I learned a lot of systems right there. And then the TV show started airing and everyone at Burger Lounge was like, what the fuck are you doing here? And I was like, all right, I'm out. And then I got lucky. The phone just started ringing. There's a little bit of luck in everyone's success. And for me, it was just people started resonating. And they started messaging me on Facebook and they started messaging me on Instagram. And so then I started juggling playing drums and going and cooking private dinners for people until the point that the private dinners became so much that I didn't have time to play drums.
Is that something you thought you wanted to do? Like as you're going through the process of the show, thinking about like, okay, this is going to open some doors. What did you think you were maybe going to be doing? Like after you got through, the burger restaurant and all that, were you thinking about private chefing or thinking about like higher end restaurant cooking?
Yeah, I didn't know. I really had no idea what to do with it. And that's the hardest part with any like reality competition show where people are literally going there to change their lives. There's no manual when you come out. There's nothing that says, go do this. And so I really had no idea what to do. So I was chasing everything that showed up. So if someone wanted a private dinner, I would go do a private dinner. If I saw a spot at a restaurant was open, I would go apply. And I worked at a couple restaurants. I learned enough that one day I actually ran a kitchen in a restaurant. And I learned a lot about that too. Like when you're a chef and you're not the owner, like you have to answer to these owners and they promise you the world to get you in. And then when you get in, you find out everything's on COD and you have to cut people and send people home and fire people. You're like, this is terrible. So I just followed everything that was in front of me and presenting itself, and was just learning and a sponge along the way. And then it got to the point where I got asked to be a second chef on a really high-end private gig that was it was a 3-month gig at a big mansion in Bel Air. And there was so many people, like there was 2 chefs on. We had 3 servers every shift. We had like 5 housekeepers.
So this is like a private chef gig for like one family.
Yeah, for a a royal family. It was insane. One of the craziest gigs still that I've ever done. And it went so well that the house manager really loved me and loved what I was doing with food. And he sent out my name to other house managers, and then that was it. And then it was like everywhere was wanting me. So then from there, I went to another gig and I landed a full-time private gig. And I really liked it because I went from having to hustle one party to the next party to the next party, not knowing where the next phone call was coming from, to now I have a 6-figure chef gig, and the only stress I have is, do they like the food? And it was like, okay, I really like this. I don't like having to be tied to a restaurant and answer to owners. I was like, all I got to do is make these guys happy. But then I learned, like, this client really not fun, because he just wanted well done filet mignon every day. And I was like, at the beginning, I was super green. I was like, I can make the best well done filet mignon. This is gonna be my challenge. Every day I want to make sure he loves this thing. And then like every one of them just like inched, like cut away at my soul, just a little by little. And I was like, I can't do this anymore.
I think it sounds glamorous to the outsider to like work for a celebrity, right? Like I have friends who like cook for pro sports players, and everyone's like, oh, that would be so cool. And then you hear what they eat. It's like they're doing meal prep of like plain chicken breast with like steamed vegetables every day. And if you're like a chef who likes to be creative and have that control, yeah, it's kind of like soul sucking, I imagine.
It can be. And you have to find ways to not burn out. So after that well done filet mignon guy, I got called by a basketball player, and I went and took that job because it was more money, and he was super cool. Like, the restrictions I had with him were more just, he needed calories. I had to make him 4,500 calories a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And like, that's really, really hard when you're doing it with a healthy diet. Like, I couldn't just give him bread. You know what I mean? I had to it had to be healthy. So, you know, pancakes from scratch every morning, and it'd be like, you know, pancakes and eggs and sausage, and it was like, damn, that's only 900 calories. I'm like, fuck, what do I do?
That's a lot of calories.
I got creative with it. I made like these little frozen peanut butter bars. So that helped him get a lot. And then dinner, you know, we'd do big stuff, but he loved when I cooked him lamb. Like, he loved that all the time. But he got traded. He went to DC. So I was like, I'm not going to DC. And that's the thing also, like you were saying, it looks glamorous. My client now is super glamorous, but I have to be really creative, and it's really difficult. I have restrictions, like they can't have, it's gluten-free. She's allergic to tomatoes, and she's vegetarian, but she loves pasta. So like making a bolognese with, you know, no tomatoes, gluten-free, like, it's hard, but that's where the creativity is. I can like make it happen.
So are you exclusively right now, is that all you're doing, is just working with one client, or are you still able to like do one-off events?
I'm exclusively with this client full time. I do like 5, sometimes 6 days a week, and then I'll do all their holidays and parties and all that stuff. But during the pandemic, I was cooking for them 5 days a week, but they weren't hosting any parties. So I was just cooking for this couple. It was just 2 people. I was just doing dinner with enough leftovers for lunch. And so I was like, what do I do with my free time? But everything was closed. I couldn't go anywhere. So I created this cookie company, Epic Mega Cookie Co., and developed it through Shopify, and got the website built, brought all my marketing creative side to life, and then launched August of 2021 and was doing just online sales through the website through Shopify. And it's been going amazing. And we've just slowly been building that up. And we just launched this Halloween. We opened a retail shop at an outdoor, like, live above mall area in Playa Vista, and still shipping nationwide through the website. So that's been insane this holiday. Last year, we were really busy doing just online. Now having the shop, people seeing it, word of mouth, we've done 5x the amount of sales this Christmas. So this holiday season.
Why cookies?
Good question. Being on MasterChef, I had this like rock and roll vibe, and I approach everything like I approached music. I break it down the same kind of way. And since leaving MasterChef season 6, I was like, I need a product to sell. Like, I have fans. Like, what can I sell them? And I tried just doing like merchandise back in like 2015, and it was fine, but it was like, it's not what the people really wanted. They wanted something they could eat. I'm a chef. Like, what is it? And like, just doing a hot sauce, yeah, it's cool, but there's so many hot sauces out there. Like, I'm not going to stand out with that. And that's not really, like, I love to eat hot sauce, but like, I make like fancy food, like, where does hot sauce play? So, but I was just thinking, like, what can I ship? What is something that I can mail? What is a food that I can mail? And then I made cookies for my client one day that they were sending out for Valentine's Day to all their clients. And I took a little Instagram and I put it on the gram, and everyone was like, "Oh my God, are you selling cookies?" And I was like, "No, but maybe I should be."
Maybe. Would you buy them if I did?
Yeah, exactly. So I got a great response from just that. And I was like, all right, now I got to go make this cookie rocket roll. It was kind of like a happy accident. Like, I posted something and the people responded. And so the way they responded, I was like, okay, I'm going to lean into this. But now I got to put my rock and roll vibe on it. So I really created like the punk rock of cookies. I mean, it's got a very punk rock vibe.
What's a punk rock cookie? What flavors you got going on?
Like, our first flavor was s'mores, but the whole thing about it is it's big. It's called Epic Mega Cookie, and like, the box is a whole experience. You open it up, there's an alien in a spaceship inside, and he's like beaming up the cookie, because there's like that underlying, in punk rock, there's an obsession with aliens. I don't know why, but it's there. I think Tom DeLonge was a big part of that. So I just put like my spin on it. But then, like, I make the cookies like chefy, but like, for instance, right now we have a snickerdoodle cookie, but we do a bourbon caramel and candied pecans in the snickerdoodle cookie, and it's an insane cookie. Then I came with this other cookie called Chef's Dream, which is I brown the butter first, and then chill it, and then whip the butter with the sugar. So it's a brown butter base, and then I push the salt like to the max. Like, when I was testing this cookie, it was like I made a bunch of doughs and I just added 1 more gram of salt into each one to taste, and I pushed it all the way as far as I could push it. So it's brown butter, salt, and then butterscotch chips. And that cookie is like, that cookie doesn't look fancy because it's just a smooth top. I put sugar on top, so it looks like a sugar cookie, but when you bite into it, it's like a punk rock chorus.
That sounds like my jam. Like, chocolate's fine and all, but I lean towards like butterscotch, like a butterscotch pot de creme. Like, I'd rather have butterscotch chips in my cookies than chocolate chips. Like, I'm totally with you. That sounds like an amazing cookie.
Well, it's becoming like the unsung hero. Like, now that we've had the store open and it's been online more, like, more and more, this cookie is like, every week we get more sales on this cookie than the other cookies. So it's becoming a fun one. So we do stuff like that. It's like, we do pop-ups with like markets, and then we do like limited edition runs of cookies. So it's kind of like getting that limited edition CD or whatever, like keeping it like that. And then now we have merchandise too. Like, I'm wearing one of the merchandise is a tatted up alien. He's got cookie boxers on.
People love that. Like, I want all my gear to be just like chef friend restaurant stuff. Like, I have like my winter hat this year is Chef Matt Collins, like been a guest on the podcast. Like, I'm wearing Chef Collins winter hat everywhere. And it's like, I got my cap from my favorite barbecue spot in Texas. You know, it's like, I like that stuff. It's fun. I think the people love it.
Yeah. And then we also just launched cookie scented candles too, you know, all the deliciousness and 0 calories.
Well, how do you manage your time? Because, you know, I think that's one of the things that many of us who are like solo entrepreneurs, like, it sounds like you've got a lot going on with that alone. I think that is probably enough to take all your time, right? But then you also have like a chef client. So,
yeah,
you know, how do you figure that out? I'm sure, you know, you clearly have people working for you now and with you. When did you decide that you needed to kind of like bring people on to help with that? And what did that look like? Because I think that's one of the things a lot of our listeners struggle with is they want to grow and scale, but they don't really know when they need help and who to bring on to help them.
It's tricky, and I don't know if I've 100% nailed it, but like, you do need a team. It's really hard to like relinquish the responsibility on something that's so important to you. And so this has been a good practice of that. And it really shows like, you know, I created the recipe and now it's like, okay, I got to type out this recipe so that it's foolproof. No matter who's doing it, they can follow this recipe and then I know that it's good. And then that was a good practice. Like, okay, let somebody do it. Don't worry about it. Like, let them put it in the cookie box, let them package it up, let them send it out, and letting go and seeing it still work, it actually makes your foundation stronger. And then it's like, okay, what else can I delegate? So it's really learning how to delegate. I mean, I couldn't do any of this without my wife. She has fully immersed herself into it as well. So you learn to lean on the people around you. I mean, she does so much, but also we have friends that'll come over and just drink wine and help us box cookies because they want to hang out with us. And like, don't feel bad about asking someone. You know, you'll learn who your true friends are when you have a small business. They'll show up. Even with some private gigs, like there was one time I had a chef cut himself unloading his mandolin, and it was so bad he had to go straight to the hospital and get stitches. And it was just me now. And so I put an apron on my wife and I was like, okay, everything that I knew that I could just explain and have her do, you know, she did it. She cut things, she cooked things, and just followed my direction. And so it's really about just learning how to delegate. You know, you look at someone like Gordon Ramsay and it's like, man, how does he have, you know, 15 TV shows, 25, 30 restaurants, however many Michelin stars? Well, he just delegates. You learn how to delegate. So I'm still learning how to do that, but I think that's really the answer is you just got to learn how to create a product or create your vision in a way that you can explain it to somebody else and let them take it and go with it and just trust.
And I think, you know, sometimes we think, oh, well, everyone can see me struggling and they would offer to help, you know, but because they haven't, you know what I mean? Like you get caught up in your head where you're like, oh, I don't need to ask for help because people will just see that I need help. But it doesn't work like that. Like the amount of times where I've just like finally said like, hey, can someone give me a hand? And everyone's like, oh yeah, of course. But like, you don't get that help if you don't ask, you know?
Exactly. You don't. And then also it's just like, you got to be willing to just put in the hours. I mean, last week I did somewhere 133, 135 hours bleeding into the next week. And like my wife was right there with me the whole time. And, you know, it was like, we just busted it out. And because we know it's like, it's the holidays, like January was not going to be this busy. So we got to get it now. And so it's just making those small sacrifices and then you grow from it. It's like with my client too, like Thanksgiving, I had to cook for like 16 people. So I was prepping all that, plus, you know, cooking for them every day. Plus, like, I was in Dallas, so I was just making phone calls for the cookie. And then it got cut down to a smaller number for the meal, but whatever. It was like I was doing so much that the following week, I was just cooking for 2 people. So I just felt more relaxed. And I was like, oh, I have so much more time. And then you start learning, like, where you can manage that time. This last week, doing all the cookie stuff, all the restaurant stuff, all the podcast stuff, that this week, just like, I'm like, I can just make cookies all day today. I got nothing to do but make cookies, you know?
You just like dropped in there that you have a podcast, and we haven't even talked about that. So I want to touch on that a little bit. Like, so you've got a podcast, you talk to reality TV stars, right? Not winners of shows.
Yeah. So it's called A Bunch of Losers with Derrick, and I interview anyone that's been on a reality competition show that did not win. And I thought of this idea before going on MasterChef All-Stars. I also started the cookie before MasterChef All-Stars. So just to go back to a previous topic we were talking about, like when I came off of season 6, I didn't know what to do. When I got the call for All-Stars, I was like, I know exactly what I'm doing. And I started putting things in play before I even went there and before I even went and filmed, because I knew, like, when I come off of this, I need to have something to sell. When I come off of this, I need to have a podcast. I need to have a place for people to go watch content. I hate doing cooking videos, but I do them because people enjoy them. So that's kind of like, in like Hollywood, they're like, we do 1 for you and 3 for me or whatever. Like, the cooking videos are my 1 for them.
That sucks though, because like I hear this so often with creators. It's just like the time suck. Like they don't want to do them, but they do them. Like, when can we just do what we want to do without having to do the 1 for them? But that we could get sidetracked going down that road for sure.
So but to answer the question about the podcast, I came up with the idea. I knew a production company that I had worked with before. I presented it with them. Before we even shot the first episode, I made a deck. For those that don't know what a deck is, it's basically like a PDF pitch of what you're trying to create with, photos and lines and captions and stuff. So I made a deck, pitched it to them. I also had a friend that was like, I know someone at iHeart, and I had already signed with this production company, and then iHeart got wind of it and they loved the idea, and they were like trying to buy the podcast from us. And I was like, that's a sign. I was like, I don't even have an episode recorded yet, and I got iHeart wanting to buy it. I'm like, okay, my years in Hollywood, I'm like, I'm gonna hold on to it, So I'm like, nope, hold on to it. But it also lit the fire under the podcast or the production company. They're like, yes, this is good. So they leaned in. But then I got booked for MasterChef All-Stars and was like, okay, I got to go see if I can win this thing. And if I win this, we'll just title the podcast something else. We'll do something else. But let me go try and win this first. And then when I didn't win, it was like, it's okay, because this podcast is going to be big. It was that. It was like it clicked. Like when you say the name, A Bunch of Losers, you're like, wait, what? Like, why do we want to hear from these losers? Well, because when you go on a reality TV show, if you do well, you win. You change your life. And everyone I've talked to has in some way changed their life drastically. I mean, I love talking with people. I love sharing stories, and really that's what a podcast is all about. So I've been learning how to be better at it, but it's one of those things where I just love doing it.
Yeah, it's not something I ever thought I was going to do. Like, I've talked about this on the show so many times, but like how it came about, I hadn't even really thought about it until someone suggested it to me. But, so many people start podcasts, they have training. They've been in journalism. They know how to interview, or they have the editing down. I was just like, I've never interviewed people. I don't know anything about recording or editing. And we're just going to start this show. I didn't have a production company.
Right.
And the amount of things I've learned along the way has been phenomenal. But at its core, I really want to talk to people and have them be able to share their stories. That's, at the end of the day, I just want to have a good conversation, connect with some people. And, if I can give them a platform, I'm not necessarily going for the big name people, right? Like sometimes it's hard because I'll have some big name person reach out and want to come on the show. And it's like, I really want to save this space for, not that you're a lesser known person, but, it would be cool to have this celebrity chef on the show, but I really want to have that guy who's just like a personal chef in Denver or whatever, who nobody's heard of before. I think that's more interesting.
But I like that but for you, it's not about so much like your interview skill. You created a niche that you knew there's a lot of people out there, right? Like chefs without restaurants. I mean, I just think that's brilliant. And I'm glad that you're doing it, because there are a lot of us that we're carving a path and we don't necessarily get the guidance that we need because we don't know who to talk to. We don't know, because most of the time the private chef is very hidden, you know. I know when I first came off MasterChef and I wanted to start doing private dinners, I reached out to some chefs and they were like, they wouldn't tell me what to do. They wouldn't give me any advice. They wouldn't share how much they were charging. It was almost like they ignored me and were like, figure it out. And I kind of get it now, but at the same time, I'm like, I don't want to be that guy now. Like, I've let people in. I teach them what to do. I show them how to make themselves be successful, because you share your talent and share your success with other people, it comes back to you even more.
And, you know, for me, the market is huge. Like, even in a small to mid-sized city, like, if you're not having other chefs, like, for your business go out and work, then you can only do one event a day. And you probably can't work 7 days a week. I'd be surprised if a lot of chefs, private chefs, could work 5 days a week. So if someone wants to hire me on a Friday night and I'm booked, like, it doesn't hurt me to pass that along. And it doesn't hurt me to tell someone else in my area how to be a better personal chef. Like, I don't see that. It doesn't come off as competition to me.
Yeah, I mean, you do have to vet those chefs, because if you stick a chef with a client and they fail, then that's where it hurts you.
100%.
Because I had that happen. When you do it right and you vet the right chef, then it comes back to you. They're like, "Oh, this chef was amazing. Who else can you get us?" And it's like, and then you get to start making a fee off of booking another chef. And I think that's where all private chefs, that's where we can grow, right? Like, when you have one client, where else do you go? You can't grow anywhere. You got to be able to hire other chefs and place them and make money from that so you can grow your business.
That's kind of the intersection where I'm at right now, and just kind of deciding which road to go down, because that becomes like a whole other thing. Like, how much time do you want to spend being like a staffing agency, right? You know, like
right.
Headhunter or whatever. Like, if you really love just being out there cooking, is that something you should stick with, or should you go down that road of trying to connect chefs with clients? And I've kind of got like one toe in each pond there.
Yeah, and I felt the same way. Like, I leaned into it, and then I was like, this is, for me, it wasn't worth it. So now I just do it. Like, if one of my chefs hits me up, like, hey, I need work, I put them at the top of my list. And then if someone calls, I connect them. And depending on the situation, I'll take a fine recipe or I won't. And that's as far as I'll go with it. Like, I don't want to have a whole staffing agency.
Well, what's next for you? Do you have anything slated that you can talk about?
You know, the cookie, we've got that going. We have the store at Runway Playa Vista. We got new flavors coming out always. I'm about to launch Epic Mega Minis that are going to come in an assortment package, so you can try multiple cookies without having to buy the giant cookie.
Is that like an oxymoron, Mega Mini?
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I don't know. We're going to do a trial. We're going to see how it works. Sign up. I'm going to be doing a VIP tasting Tuesdays. So everyone on our VIP list, they can come to the store on Tuesdays and get a sample of new ideas free of charge. Just come in, but you have to be on the VIP list. We're going to do those one Tuesday a month. What else I got going on? I mean, obviously the podcast, I got a lot of really big guests lined up for January. Let me ask you a question. Do you have a favorite client that you ever worked for that you can share?
A favorite? Yeah. Like, so I only do one-off parties, and I did Ali Krieger, who's a women's soccer player. I did her bachelorette party a couple of years ago, and it was booked through her best friend who does not play pro soccer, but I always try and dig as much info as I can. So when this woman's like, oh, it's for my friend who's a women's soccer player and whatever, I just started Googling. So I kind of had an idea, and I was hoping, and I get there, and all the women at the party, except for the host, play for like a women's US like soccer team, had played like national team. Like, so Allie was on the women's team that won, you know, like 3-4 years ago or something like that, like Women's World Cup. And there was just like Crystal Dunn was there. Like, she just was the team that won like the women's championship here like 2 months ago. Like, my son and I went and saw them play in DC. So they were super cool. They did an 80s themed prom bachelorette party. So it was like the day after Halloween. So they all came like wearing like 80s gowns and stuff. And they wanted Mexican food, which is my favorite. So like I brought a guy with me and we were like making homemade tortillas to order, had like 3 kinds of meats, all the salsas. But she was super cool about sharing to social media because, so many of these people are really private. And when she was there, she, tons of photos, videos with us. She's got like, I don't know, 400,000 followers on Instagram and posting that stuff. But I've also said that like that didn't give me like a big bump in business because I think a lot of people are like, wow, I'm going to cook for this celebrity. They're going to share it on social, but it's like, it's so fast. Like even if it's a static post, it gets buried so fast. So you can put that as part of your resume or on your like, hey, I've cooked for, but that really doesn't translate, right? Like being in LA, I'm sure you see that all the time. Like just because you cooked for a well-known person one time does not necessarily give you that social leverage that people hope it does.
I've had it go both ways. I cooked for Ty Dolla $ign and he was sharing my stuff on his story and it got me new followers, a lot of new followers, but it didn't lead to any new business. But then when I was cooking for the basketball player, he started sharing my stuff and I booked 3 gigs through people that were fans of his, that had the money, that could afford me. And they were like so excited to be able to eat the food that their favorite LA Laker eats. It was like, that was kind of weird, but it was cool. So I've had to go both ways. But I think, when those celebrities do that, when they share with no strings attached, like I think some of them understand how important that is. I think others, like they don't understand and we're really grateful. And then the ones that don't and keep it private and are like, don't support in that way because they're not getting paid, you see that too. And I think that's the worst way to be about it. But
I mean, it was cool. Like it was a fun party. Like I was honored that we could do it. And it was, the food that I loved cooking and people who were really nice. I've cooked for other well-known people who are like super cheap, kind of like dicks, to be honest. Like one guy who was nickel and diming me and, like he rented out an Airbnb for a whole month, like during COVID. So he could like be private and not around people. And he's like, every single, like trying to get me for like $60 a head when like I've been charging like way above that. And, like, well, I'm going to shop around. I'm like, feel free to shop around. Like, but then who he is and you're like, wow, this guy,
you don't want to.
People like that sometimes I think are used to treating people they hire like the help. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, and I'm over being the help. Like, I don't care what I'm getting paid for this. Like if I get the vibe that you're just going to have me be your like beck and call servant, I'm just not interested in doing it. That's where I'm at in my career. And I'm comfortable knowing that.
I think all clients, they eventually learn that like the chef is not the help like their housekeeper,
Right.
First of all, you're lucky that you can afford both and you shouldn't treat the housekeeper any less than the chef. But I guess what I'm saying is that like, we're putting the food in your body, dude. Like you need to be really nice to that person. Like you need to treat me like a part of the family. I think anyone that has a private chef, they should find the chef that they feel like that person's part of the family, because I've been all of it. I've been the guy that has been treated like the help. I've been the guy that's the rock star chef, but they're hiring me just because they wanted to get me. And then I've also, like now I have the client where I literally feel like I'm a part of the family and I can walk in and around their house at any time and have conversations, sit down at the dinner table, like open their fridge, and that's the best place to be. Like, when your client gives you a hug at the end of the night and just says, I love you, like that's the highest place you can be as a private chef. And that's the best place to be, because then you are stress-free and performing at the highest level.
Well, one of the questions I always like to ask is, what does it mean to you to be a chef?
It's a very simple but very deep question, because I know when I first started, it was like, there were chefs that were like, well, you're not a chef. And it's like, well, everyone calls me chef. So I don't know how to answer that, because like I show up, I cook food, and people throw that word around a lot. Right. But when you look at someone like Josiah Citron or some others that are Michelin star chefs that never went to culinary school, they're chefs. I think really what a chef is a person that can be creative with food and also manage the food and the waste and the budget. I think it's someone that can lead a team. I mean, you don't have to know everything about every cuisine to be a chef. I think it's more about being the leader and being able to manage the food and the expectation from the guest and the client, and then also, make good, delicious food and make people happy. So I think being a chef, like what is a chef, is a very difficult question. You have to know that you are doing something more than just anyone that knows how to cook, right? I think that's really what it is. You're doing more than anyone who just knows how to cook.
All right, that's a good one. Thanks so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate you taking the time. It's been such a pleasure getting to know you a little bit and talking to you today.
Yeah, man. Please stay in touch and let me know when this is live and everything. I enjoyed it. Thank you.
And to all of our listeners, this has been Chris with the Chefs Without Restaurants podcast. Thanks so much for listening and have a great week. Go to chefswithoutrestaurants.org to find our Facebook group, mailing list, and chef database. The community's free to join. You'll get gig opportunities, advice on building and growing your business, and you'll never miss an episode of our podcast. Have a great week.